Hello and welcome. In this video we are going to be looking at doing some calculations based on currency exchange rates, and we're going to pull the exchange rates directly from the Bank of England website so that they will update every time the Bank of England website is updated. You can do this in Excel itself. We looked at that on a previous exercise, but on this one we're going to do it in Power BI. The data that I've got is an Excel spreadsheet that looks a bit like this. So I've just got a list of my products, a list of their prices and how many people have bought, and I'm going to do some calculations to work out my sales figures in GBP, and then we're going to convert them into euros and US dollars. In order to pull this data into Power BI, I need to make sure my Excel spreadsheet is closed. So I'm going to flip into Power BI. Now, when you open Power BI, it will ask you to create a new blank report. I'm just going to click onto blank report up here. And then I'm going to go and get my Excel data by using this Excel workbook button. And this is the Excel workbook that we were just looking at. Now, the important difference with working between Excel and Power BI is what we're doing at the moment is effectively linking the data to that source spreadsheet. So when changes are made in Excel, we can refresh Power BI and Power BI will pull all the changes across automatically. So this part of the process you will only have to set up once, and then the data will come across into your report automatically every time a refresh is done. Now, if you have a look down the left-hand side, can you see within that file, Power BI currency sales data, there are two options. There's one called sales data table and there's one that's called sales data. They are actually the same data set, but this little symbol here is showing me that that's the name of the sheet tab along the bottom. And this little symbol is showing me that it's something called a table, which you set up by doing format as table. So if you've done that, you'll find you get two options for the same piece of data. It doesn't matter which one you choose, but I suppose my vague reference is to use the sales data table in case there's other odd bits of data lurking on that sheet that I don't want. You get a choice. Do you want to load it? Do you want to transform it? If you know your data is perfect, you can just hit load and it will load you directly into Power BI. If you know there are changes that you might want to make, you can load it first into Power Query by choosing this option called Transform Data, which is what I'm going to do. And when I click Transform Data, it gives me a chance to make changes, get rid of columns and things that I don't need, maybe change the data type, something like maybe something's a number and I want it to be text, or something's text and I want it to be a number, and so on. Now, we'll see what Power Query's done by itself. Can you see on the right-hand side here, there's a set of what's called applied steps, and it's almost like a sort of automatic macro recording that as you do something in Power Query, it's remembering what you did in that order and it will perform those actions again next time you run the job. So it's saying the source of the data is this location here. It's brought that data in for me, and then it's done this option called change type. And what it does when it does change type is it kind of tries to detect what type of data is in each column. So it's ascertained that first column is a date and it's put a little date symbol. It said the invoice number is stored as text. That's got that little ABC symbol. And if I come scooting across over to the right hand side, that quantity column is got a little 1, 2, 3 next to it because it knows it's a number. And the unit price in GBP has got this 1.2. It doesn't mean that value, it's just a symbol to show that it knows it's a decimal number, which is correct because it's going to be a currency. A decimal number is the best way to store it. Now, what I would like to do is I would also like to bring in some data from the Bank of England to give me the current exchange rates. So I'm going to go to New Source and an option called Web. And it's asking me for the URL, so basically the web page location that I want. You won't be able to do this on every web page, but the Bank of England do allow it, although they have terms and conditions about what you do with the data that's published on the page. If I go into the Bank of England site, the best way to find this, just do a Google search for daily spot exchange rates and you'll see it should bring you to the Bank of England database, and you can make sure you're on the right currency. So you can see it says against GBP, and it's a daily amount. And there's 3 columns of data in here, or 4 columns of data, I suppose. There's the name of the currency at the latest date that they've got. Now, at the time of recording, this is the 11th of July, and the latest data they've got is from the 9th of July. And then they've got a 52-week high and 52-week low. So instead of finding the current date, you wanted to find the lowest possible value or the highest possible value for that year, I suppose, then you could use one of those other columns instead. We'll just use this first column here, I think the 9th of July column. Now, all I need to do is copy this whole web address along the top here. So I'm just going to select it all and do Control C. And when I flip back into my Power Query editor, I can do Control V and just paste it into that URL box. And when I choose OK, it should link me up with the Bank of England site. Now, this is the bit that can be difficult to navigate because not every site is structured in the same way. So you're going to have to do a little bit of trial and error depending on who you're trying to connect with. They give you a little bit of help by giving you a web view so you can see what page you're on and what the page looks like. But the table view is the one that I'm interested in because this is showing you the data that you're going to get. And luckily, with the Bank of England site, there's only one table and it's called Table 1. Some sites you'll see a whole list of tables and you have to kind of scoot through to find out which one has got the data in that you're interested in. So I'm just going to tick Table 1 and choose OK, and it should be linking me into that daily spot page. And it's brought in those 4 columns of data very nicely. However, I can foresee a problem. Can you see the names of the columns? You know, last time when we brought in the sales data, it worked out that the first row of data in my Excel spreadsheet was the column names, which it was. It's done the same thing with this table from the Bank of England, but there is a problem. In the Bank of England, when they publish the data, they change the name of the column to reflect the date that it was last updated. So although this says the 9th of July now, when I refresh it next week, it will have a different name. And that's going to be a problem for these applied steps down here, because effectively it's doing like a little macro would do in Excel, where it's going through the steps repetitively every time you bring the data in. And if it was called the 9th of July and the next time they looks at it, it's called the 14th of July, the step potentially could fall over. So although it's clever of it to have done that, I want to go through and remove some of those steps. So I'm going to get rid of the one called change type. We'll come back to that in a minute. And it's this one called promote headers that's going to cause me the issue. So can you see at the moment, it knows those are the headings. I'm just going to take that promote headers out. And this is what the data looked like when it extracted it from the table. And they were called column 1, column 2, column 3. And it took it on itself to promote those headers and rename the columns. And I don't want that because it's not going to be consistent the next time I refresh my report. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to choose an option called remove rows and remove top rows. And I only want to remove that very first row. So I'll just put number of rows is 1. And that will get rid of that problematic heading, and then I can name the columns myself, and then that will stay consistent and won't cause my applied steps to fall over next time it runs. These 2 columns are the 52-week high and the 52-week low columns. I decided I didn't really want them, so I'm just going to hold my shift key down so I can select both of them, and there's an option called remove columns. And it means that when the job runs next time, it will automatically take out those 2 columns for me. The other thing I'm going to do is give the columns a sensible name. So I'm going to right mouse over column 1 and rename it currency. And right mouse over column 2 and rename it rate. The other thing I noticed about the rate is, can you see that the numbers are aligned to the left-hand side of the column, which I wouldn't normally expect? And I'll tell you why. If I click off the column, you might be able to see there's a little ABC in the corner here. And that's saying it thinks this column is text, and it should be stored as a decimal number. So I'm going to select the rate column, go to a tab at the top called Transform, and where it says Data Type Text, I'm going to change that to decimal number. and you'll see that should automatically align to the right, and that's a clue that it now thinks that's a value. And if I click onto the column heading here, can you see it's now got that little 1.2 symbol that we saw in the sales data table to show me that it knows it's a decimal number now. The other thing I'm going to do is change the name of table 1. I'm just going to rename that by using my right mouse and rename, and we'll just call that exchange rate table, let's say. Now I think we are ready to load all this up into Power BI. So I'm going to go home, and there's an option called close and apply, and that is going to load my data up into that report view that we were in when we started. Now this is where we are going to build the report, but before we do that, I want to do a few calculations on the data. So can you see, if I go back into this table view, this is what my currency table, exchange rate table, looks like now. And if I look down the right hand side, there's also, this is what my sales data table looks like. I would like to add some extra columns into the sales data table. One of them is I want to calculate the total cost of each order in GBP. So I just basically want to multiply the quantity by the unit price to work out the total price for each line of sales. I'm going to go to an option called New Column, and the column name is going to be called, let's just call it Sales GBP equals. Now I want to find the quantity column. If you just type an open square bracket, it prompts you with a list of all the column names, and I'm looking for the one called quantity, and it's pasted that in for me. And then I'm going to do a multiplication as an asterisk, just like you do in Excel. And then I want to multiply it by this unit price in GBP column. So I'm going to do another square bracket, and there's unit price in GBP. And when I press enter, it should have created me a calculated column. And I'm just going to try and make sure that that looks okay. Look, something's multiplied by 10. That's easy to check that it's done it correctly. So I've got 10 items at £8.95, and it's saying the total is £89.50. So that sounds correct. The only thing is these aren't formatted yet to show a pound sign. So I'm going to go to this format option here. Looks like a little dollar symbol. And I'm going to say this is English United Kingdom. And I'll do the same thing for the unit price, actually. English United Kingdom again, and that should all formatted correctly. Now, what I would also like to do is, let's say my colleagues in Europe don't want to see the totals in GBP, they'd like to see that in euros. So I would like to multiply that by the euro exchange rate. Now, first of all, I need to work out what the euro exchange rate is called. It's not called EUR, as you might expect. When it comes in from the Bank of England, it's got the full name of the currency. So I'm just going to have a quick look in the exchange rate table and check what it's called. It's just the word euro. So now if I go back to my sales data table and I say I want a new column, the column is going to be called Sales EUR. Don't mind it called EUR there, because that's just the name of the new column. And then equals square brackets again, because I'm going to multiply by this column this time, the sales GBP. Now, when I do my asterisk, this next option is going to be a little bit more complicated, because we don't have a column that has just the value of euro. It's got all of the different currencies in it. So we want it to look for a specific currency. So we're going to use something called LOOKUPVALUE. And if I just type in the first few letters, so LOO will probably do. Can you see it's got lookup value? And if I click onto that, it gives me a little bit of help about creating the lookup value formula. And the first thing it's done, can you see it's put lookup value, open bracket, so we don't need to type all that. The first thing it wants to know is the result column name. So where is the value that you want in your result? Well, in my case, it's in the column that we called rate. So I can just click onto that and it's pasting that in. And then the next option is a comma, which you'll have to type manually. But when you type the comma, can you see the blue heading has gone from result column name to search column name? So it's basically saying which column contains the values that you want to search through, when in our case, it's the name of the currency, which is called exchange rate table currency. And if I put in another comma, it's saying, well, what is the value that you're trying to search for? I'm going to search for the word euro, but because it's text, I need to remember to put that in double quotes. So I have to type that bit in myself, and I have to type in the closing bracket myself. And when I enter that, it should convert all of these sales figures into their equivalent value in euros. Now it's 1.3 something, I think. We'll check that in a minute. But can you see something that was £58 is coming up as £67.93 in euros? That sounds about right to me. So for the moment, I'll trust that figure. And then I'm going to just change it to display in euros. So I get a euro symbol and 2 decimal places and so on. I'll do that one more time because we'll do it in US dollars as well. So we want to go new column. The column is going to be called sales USD equals, so that's just the end of the name of the column, and now we're doing the actual formula itself. If I do a square bracket, I'm looking for sales GBP, which is this one, asterisk for my multiplication again, and then if I just type LOO, it should find me lookup value, click on lookup value, and we are multiplying. Let's have a look. It says result column name, oh, that was the rate, and then a comma. Search column name, that was the currency column, and a comma. Search for value. Now, I didn't check what it's called, but I happen to know off the top of my head, it's just called US space dollar. We should have gone to check that really, but don't forget to put your inverted commas in and then close your brackets at the end. And then again, I'm going to format that as English United States. So it will give me $1 and 2 decimal places. And that all seems to have worked swimmingly. Now, what I would like to do is I would like to do a report to show me, first of all, the sales in GBP, and then we will make the report automatically convert those values in euros and those values in dollars. So can you see on the left-hand side here, we're in this table view at the moment. In the left-hand side, there's an option called report view, and this takes you to where you can build the pages of your report. And I think the first thing we'll do is we'll do a report that groups by category. So I'm going to go to this pane here, which is called visualizations, and I'm going to choose an option called table. And from my sales data table, I'm going to choose my product group. And if you remember, I said I don't want to do it by individual products just because there are so many. It will make the table absolutely enormous. So I'm just going to do it by product group. And then I'm going to say calculate sales in GBP. If I drag that underneath the product group in the columns area here, can you see it's given me each product group and then the total for the whole lot, and it's given me a grand total overall. Now, what I would also like to do is have a chart that displays the same data. So I'm going to click onto the background to get rid of that selection and back to my visualizations pane. And I'm going to go for something called a clustered column chart. And if I click onto that, I'm going to get the same data again, so that this table will illustrate this chart effectively. So I'm going to say I want the product group on the x-axis and the sales in GBP on the y-axis. If I make that big enough, you will see that then I've got a total for each group on the chart. Now, One of the things I would like to do with this chart is do a little bit of formatting. One of the things I find about Power BI is sometimes it's quite difficult to find the formatting option that you want because there are so many of them. So what we'll do, rather than do this every time we create a chart, we'll create the chart once in the GBP page, and then we'll just duplicate the whole page. So then all we have to do is change the data to a different currency, and all the color schemes and the labels and everything that you've chosen will be identical. So make sure that you've got your chart selected. And can you see in the visualizations area, you're selected on a button called Add Data to Your Visual. And just to the right of that, there's a little button with a paintbrush on it called Format Your Visual. And this is where all the options live for each type of chart. Now, this is where it gets confusing because every type of chart has different options and you have to learn as to where they live within this pane. And to add insult to injury, there's a section called Visual and a section called General, and it isn't necessarily easy to find which one contains the data that you want. But I happen to know on Visual, there is a section called Columns, which will change the options for the color scheme, for example. So if I change the color here, I started with that blue because this is going to be, let's say, go for a nice dark blue. Can you see it's changed all of my columns at once? If I didn't want that, if I wanted each category to have a different color, can you see where it says all here? I could just say IT equipment, and then I could choose a different color for each individual column. So if I then choose the next one down, PPE and safety, I'll go for a different color for that one. Now, once you're happy with your color scheme, the other thing I would like to do is I would like to put some labels on these. If I scoot down a little bit further beneath the color area, there's an area called data labels, which are turned off at the moment. So if I turn them on, you can see it's giving me the value at the top of each column. Now, for the next part of the process, I want to put some sort of heading, I think, along the top. So I'm going to go and grab a text box, and we'll just put the text sales by product group in GBP, let's say. I'm just going to highlight that text, and you'll see on from this little floating toolbar, I can then choose what font and font size I want. I'm going to go for quite a big font size, I think. And then if I press the escape key on my keyboard, can you see how it highlights the border all the way around my text box? Then I should be able to resize it, and if I wanted to drag it into a different position, I could move it by grabbing that little border to get the position that I want. The other thing I might do, just because I'm going to do multiple currencies, is I might put a little flag on each country's page, just so that when you switch pages, it's really obvious that you have done. And also it gives me an excuse to show how to put a graphic in. So if I go to the insert menu, there's an image option here. Now it gives me an image box, and you might be tempted to think you can click onto that little mountain symbol like you can in other Microsoft products. You can't. You have to do it from the format image pane over here. And can you see underneath the style heading, there's a subheading called image. Underneath that, there's an option called upload image, and then this is where you can browse for the graphic that you want. And because this is in GBP, I'm going to put a little Union Jack in there, I think. And I'm just going to make that a bit smaller. Maybe let's pop it maybe up here somewhere. Now, I think that's all I need to do for this page. Oh, the only thing is I might rename the pages down the bottom here. I'm just going to rename that again. If I double click on the text, I can just say, I don't know, sales GBP or something as the name of my page. Now, because honestly, it's a little bit of a pain having to reformat all the colours, find all the data labels and so on that we did for the report. What I want to do is duplicate the report exactly as it is and then add in the euro values or the USD values rather than having to go through this whole process again. So I think the easy thing to do is copy the whole page. So if I right mouse over where it says sales in GBP, the name of my sheet, I'm going to choose duplicate, and that will create me exactly the same report, which is now going to be, if I rename this one, let's say we're going to make this sales in euro. So that's EUR. Now I've got to remember each of the fields on this need to be changed. So if I click onto the table first of all, can you see where it says sum of sales in GBP here? I'm just going to choose the little cross just to remove the GBP figures. And because we've already done the calculation in euros, I can literally just drag and drop that underneath this product group heading. And now it's doing all my calculation in euros. I'm going to change the name of the heading and say this is sales by product group in euro. And now to change the image, I've got to make sure that image is selected. And you know, in this format image pane here, underneath style and image, there was this upload image option. Can you see it's pointing at my unionjack.png? I'm just going to choose that little cross to remove it, and then it allows me to browse for my EU flag. And because I've already resized it and positioned it, it should be identical to the previous report. It saves me having to do that all over again. And the chart down the bottom here also needs to have the EU figures added. So I need to go to this button here where it says add data to your visual. And can you see it still says sum of GBP, sum of sales GBP at the moment. I'm going to choose the little cross to get rid of that and add my euro sales into my y-axis. Now all of these should be formatted as euros, and I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to right mouse over the page, choose duplicate, rename this sales in USD, and then do the whole process again. So this table, make sure that's selected so you get the little handles around it, remove the euro figures and add the USD figures. Change this to USD. Make sure I've got my little flag symbol selected, and under style and image, remove my EU flag and browse for my US flag. And not to forget to do the chart down the bottom here, remove the sum of sales from this one and add the USD one back in again. And now I should have 3 lovely little reports that will, when the data changes in the Excel spreadsheet or there's a fluctuation in the exchange rate, as soon as I hit the refresh button, all of this data will update. Now, the other thing that I might do for the EU and the USD pages is I might put a little card on here just to show you the exchange rate that I've used for the calculation, in case that's not what somebody else has in their records. So I'm going to add a little card. Let's do this on the euro one. And I don't want the rate from the sales data table because that's calculating on all of the sales. I just want the rate from the exchange rate table. So I'm going to drag and drop that into either the values area or onto the card itself. It doesn't really matter. It's going to give you a really weird figure at the moment because it's adding up all the different exchange rates. But can you see this filters pane? If you can't see your filters pane, it might be that it's folded up. Sometimes you have to choose this little arrow to unfold it, or you have to go to view and filters to switch it on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop the filters onto this add data fields here option, and I'm just going to scoot through and select euro. Now the only thing is normally you see exchange rates with 4 decimal places, and it defaults to giving you only 2 decimal places. So what I need to do is go into this format option here and find the data format tab under general, and there should be an option here that says format, and I'm going to say it's let's say a decimal number. In actual fact, I could say it's a currency and put the euro symbol in there as well, would be better, wouldn't it? And then I will say I want it to be 4 decimal places, and then I'm just going to resize my little box to be the right one. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my GUSD column. So I'll go to my visualizations area, find something called card, which has like a little lightning strike on it, grab my rate and pop that on, grab the currency and put it into the filters area. And this time I'm going to filter for US dollar. Then I'm going to go into the format, and underneath general, there should be a data format option. I'm going to format that as a currency, and my currency is going to be, give me 1 second, US dollars, and I want 4 decimal places again. And I'll just resize that. Now, the last thing that I want to do on this page, I think, is just a tiny bit more formatting on our little card with the exchange rate, because at the moment it has the label sum of rate, which I don't think makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to go to the format, my visual area, and under call out, there is an option called label, and I'm just going to turn that off. And then if I go to the general tab, there is an option called title, and I'm just going to type in, let's say, exchange rate as the title, and then I just need to do the same thing for my euros page. So I'm going format my visual, call out, turn the label off, so you get rid of that sum of whatever it is, sum of sales, whatever it is, add, and then under general I shall turn the title on, and then just type in whatever I want for my title, which is going to be exchange rate. And the last thing I wanted to show you, I can't really show you the update from the Bank of England because that probably won't happen until Monday now. So what I'll do is I'll make a change in the Excel spreadsheet itself, and then we will see that change coming through. So let's pick on a category. Let's say furniture and workspace. Let's do it in GBP, which is currently telling me that there's £20,000. If you click onto that column, actually, you can see the exact figure appearing in the table up here. So it's £20,429 something. What I'm going to do is pop into my Excel spreadsheet. In something that's in that furniture and workspace category, I'm just going to put in a really high figure just so that we can see the update happening. And I'll just close my Excel spreadsheet down and go back to my report. Now, at the moment, it hasn't made any difference at all. But if I go to my home tab, there's a refresh button here, and I'm going to say refresh schema and data. And sometimes it'll take a minute for that to update, depending on how big your data set is, but mine should happen reasonably quickly. And can you see now my furniture and workspace figure is enormous because of that huge figure that I put in. And if I go back to Excel again and set it back to a more reasonable figure, I'll say that was 10 instead of 10,000 or however many it was. When I go back to my report, it hasn't updated yet. If I look at all my different currencies, it's still that very high figure, just converted into different currencies. But if I go to refresh, schema and data, hang about for a second, and it's reset my report. And the same thing is true if you were to wait a couple of days and refresh it again and just check the exchange rate. That should have updated automatically from the Bank of England site, however often they refresh it. Now, when you publish this data out for people to share, what you can do is you can set that refresh rate to happen automatically, normally overnight if it's a very big data set, so that every morning when they come in and look at their report, they will automatically have the most up-to-date version of that data. Now, follow along for more on Power BI. I'm going to do loads more, I think, on linking into different websites because I think it's really useful. I'm going to look at different types of maps. There's lots of fantastic map visualizations that you can do in Power BI that you can't do in things like Excel. So I hope to see you soon.